very, very bad. Very, very bad. You bad human. Do you know why you were punched in the face? Okay, let me tell you. You were punished because you are causing global warming. Do you know what global warming is? But first, clean your tears. Take this hanky. To understand global warming, you first need to understand the greenhouse effect. Do you know about the greenhouse effect? Oh.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So two small videos are there of 3 minutes. I will just show you 3 to 4 minutes.
You're thinking about a house which is green. Don't act like a stupid. There are a few gases in atmosphere, like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide. These are called greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases are good if they are in right quantity. These greenhouse gases form a layer around Earth. When rays of sun come and fall on Earth, some of them are absorbed by Earth, but most of them reflect back to the atmosphere. These reflected rays reach upper atmosphere. There, greenhouse gases take most of the heat from these rays. Some of the heat goes into space. The heat captured by greenhouse gases spreads in every direction. These heat, which has been trapped by greenhouse gases, helps to keep our Earth warm. If heat of sun is not stopped by these greenhouse gases, our Earth would freeze and average temperature would be 18 degrees Celsius. So these gases are good for Earth's survival. Otherwise, plants, animals, and we humans would have no life here. This stopping of sun heat to keep Earth warm is called greenhouse effect. So greenhouse gases are good. They trap the heat, so they help Earth to have nice temperature so that we all can live here happily. Do you know what we humans are doing? We are increasing the amount of these greenhouse gases. We have smoke coming out of vehicles, smoke coming out of factories. In this smoke, there is a lot of methane, a lot of carbon dioxide, which are greenhouse gases. Also, do you know trees and plants breathe in carbon dioxide gas, thus reducing it from atmosphere and keeping a balance of greenhouse gases? But unfortunately, we are cutting trees too, so there are less plants to absorb greenhouse gases, but more cars and factories to increase these gases. When these greenhouse gases become more and more in atmosphere, the layer of these gases become more and more thick. So when sun rays come down and get reflected back by Earth, they reach this thick layer of greenhouse gases. All these heat rays get trapped, nothing goes up into space. Temperature is increasing, Earth is becoming warmer. This is called global warming. So, now you know why you got punched. You, like all of us, are also responsible for global warming. Oh, it is too hot today. Good, you've an umbrella. You know, umbrella not only saves us from rain, it also saves us from sun rays. But do you know there is bigger umbrella made by nature in the sky? In Earth's atmosphere, there is a layer in stratosphere. It is called ozone layer. It is about 15 kilometers above the Earth's surface. This is umbrella of the Earth. It protects our Earth from ultraviolet rays. The sun sends many kinds of rays towards all planets. Out of those ultraviolet rays are very dangerous for plants and humans. Ultraviolet rays are also called UV rays. Ozone layer umbrella absorbs these rays and protects the Earth. This ozone layer umbrella does not allow ultraviolet rays to come to Earth and harm us. Do you know the harm of ultraviolet rays? These can cause skin cancer, eye cataract, sunburns, and less plants. Do you know we humans are destroying this umbrella? By using old kind of air conditioners, old refrigerators, fire extinguishers, spray cans, we are spreading gases called CFCs. These CFCs gases destroy ozone layers by reacting with it. Ozone layer is getting badly affected by these CFC gases. There are now holes in ozone layers, so protective umbrella has no holes. So if there are holes in umbrella, UV rays would directly hit the Earth, so we humans would have less plants, more diseases. Don't worry, we can protect the ozone layer by using things which don't have CFCs.
If and the rest videos I will share, you can just watch on your this because we are lack of time. So we'll start the second module. So second module is about the hazards or the disasters, the natural disasters and the man-made disasters. So from the exam point of view, look, you have studied a lot about the natural disasters and the man-made disasters. But from the exam point of view, what you will expect? Because in the last exam, if you see the questions, only 3 questions were asked for accounting for 20 marks. So it becomes very difficult now what question to expect because this itself is a very vast, you can say vast chapter because this is the biggest chapter of your syllabus. It almost accounts for 9 hours of your total for 39 hours. You can say almost one fourth part is accounted to this particular module. So it is a vast module, but if its weightage is seen in the exam, it is slightly less. Why? Because you have already, this is a very general topic, and what you can expect from that from this is you can say it is not quite predictable as in the case of other modules because other modules they are quite straightforward and you can relatively predict out of these 4 5 questions at least 1 or 2 questions will come. But in this particular module, because there are so many hazards, it becomes quite difficult to predict which sort of question will come. So you need to study in detail all aspects of the natural hazards because various type of natural hazards are there and various type of man-made hazards are there. So we had discussed the questions which were asked. Particularly 3 questions were asked. One was general question which was asked in the 2019 exam. That was how can you classify natural and man-made hazards? That is a simple question. So that answer to this question we'll discuss today. And then specifically about the man-made hazards, more focus was there in the exams. Also in previous exams, if you see of the old pattern, the marking scheme was such that this particular module had more weightage. Rather, this was not a module exactly; it was distributed, but some sort of questions were asked in this, and the recent hazards were more focused on. Like in case of that, in case of that Mumbai local, this was there, not you can say uh, Mumbai local stampede was there. So in that year, that particular stampede question was there. So in this year, you can expect a question on your pandemic that is more certain to be asked. So we'll discuss what categories are there in which category this particular hazard will fall into. So basically, just see there are 2 categories: natural hazards and man-made hazards. But anthropogenic means due to the man-made activities. So you should remember this word. So there are 2 categories: natural and man-made. In man-made also there are two. There can be classified as two. That is, one is intentional, other is non-intentional. Non-intentional means which is there for development. Technology is devised for development of the human race, but its effects, or you can say its side effects or ill effects due to the ill effects, the various hazards are there. The second is the intentional hazard, which is purposefully the man-made activities are there so that they cause harm to the human beings and the environment. So earth hazard to your health. So you can see how some you can say this is just summary of how many hazards are there. So there are 516 active volcanoes. So you can say average on an average every day 15 eruptions are there, but those are mostly in the seas or in some places which are not generally inhabited. And again 2000 tremors daily are there, but again the intensity of these earthquakes are below the 2.5 to 3 in on the Richter scale, which is not even felt by human being, but they are recorded. The earthquakes are recorded on the Richter scale, they are just not felt. So again, the earthquake classification, when we will see the various type of earthquake and classifications, at that time we'll discuss this in detail. So generally, two significant earthquake occurs daily, and you can see severe damages 15 to 20 times the earthquake cause damages on the earth annually. Out of which you can see severe damage causing earthquakes are there. Generally, they are observed once in every 5 years, or rather twice or thrice a decade, every 2 to 3 times in a decade. Severe, very great severe, you can say severe to severe earthquake is occurred, and 1800 thunderstorms at any given time are there. So these all things are there. Lightning strikes 100 times per second. but still it is not felt because its you can say its intensity is quite large, but its impact is just for some nanoseconds or milliseconds. So you can see it carries a very high electric charge, but if it were to strike you for even 1 second, we will not be, you can say, we will be converted to ashes. We will not be, will not have, our presence will not be there if it strikes for a considerably large duration of time. But because it just strikes for nanoseconds or milliseconds, so sufficiently, you can say, we are protected from it. Late summers, so especially in the pan-Pacific countries, na, or US and all Canada and all these regions, what is happening na? The summer temperatures, the summers are getting delayed, and what happens is the cyclone, the wind, the rainy season and the summer season are combining, which is leading to more and more cyclones. So every year, 5 to 7 cyclones are there, which occur in the, especially in the American, Central American and the Northern American continent, and 4 tornadoes per day are occurring, 11 blizzards. So you can see how these things are there in this on the entire globe. So generally the categories of natural hazards, they are broadly classified. Natural hazards are broadly classified into 5 terms: atmospheric or meteorological hazards, geological hazards, hydrological hazard, extraterrestrial, in biological. So in the exam, a fine question may come that what are the various classification of natural hazards. So you should give this classification, and then there are types, or you can say specific hazards are there. So basically just remember the main categories are 5: atmospheric, geological, hydrological, extraterrestrial, and biological. So atmospheric, the first type, it has this particular hazards or disasters. Of course, these are called hazards. Why hazards? Because hazards are the potential to cause damage. When will it will cause disaster? No, the disaster, it is measured by the impact on human beings. What impact is there on human beings? If there is loss of property and all, then disaster severity is not so much. It is not said to be so much disaster. Even animals are, if they are lost to disaster, still the severity of animals is, still the severity of disaster is not measured in terms of loss of animal, but the impact it causes in human beings, the severity of disaster is measured. So the first type, or the first classification, based on the first classification, the atmospheric source processes. These are the different types. The cyclones are there, thunderstorms, tornadoes, lightning, hailstorms, windstorm, ice storms. These are there because of the atmosphere. Heat waves, cold waves, blizzards, rain, everything comes under this atmosphere. Then there is geological source due to the lands, you can say land formations, or whatever is there inside the earth's crust. The hazards which are there, those are earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. Of course, tsunami occurs after an earthquake has occurred. Landslides are there, subsidence, mud flows, sinkholes. So these all things are there in geological source process. Hydrological are the floods, droughts, wildfires. Extraterrestrials are the meteorites. Extraterrestrials means outside the earth. The asteroids, meteorites, those things are there which cause the extraterrestrial. Biological. Now the current pandemic which we are facing is a type of biological disaster. So diseases, epidemic, pandemics, overpopulation, famine, these are all biological processes. And the second classification is the man-made, non-intentional. Intention is for development, but it causes disaster due to its not due to its, you can say, ill, or you can say due to its due to its non-designated use, or due to its use which is uh, outside the prescribed limits. Like for example, there was a gas leakage in the last month, na, in Tamil Nadu. So people were affected. Na? Many people lost their lives. The Bhopal gas tragedy is a prime example of that. So many people lost their lives because of the factory was there for good purpose, but it led to loss of lives. So technological disasters are there, hazardous materials are there, environmental disasters are there, industrial, Mining disasters. There are so many people you must hear na, every year they go inside the mines, especially in this rainy season and all, and the mines are either they are subsided or some problem occurs and they are not able to come out, and many people lose their lives. Nuclear disasters are there. Hiroshima, Nagasaki is a prime example. Transportation disasters are there. Structural disasters are there. Acts of people also, they come on the technological disaster. People, they just build, like for example, the safe building codes are not followed, and if people just go on construction of houses and all, and whenever an earthquake strikes, people lose, the structures are not adequate to handle the pressures which are there, which are coming from the earth, and what happens is the structure collapses. Then technology systems also that fail because of complexity and human fallibilities. Accidents are there because of the, say for example, a scaffolding system is there which is not properly designed, or you can say underground mining in that case. It is not properly designed. What will happen is it will cause the human accidents. Many a times you hear about the boiler accidents, na, for mechanical people. Boiler blasts are there, and all these type of blasts are there. They are not. What happens is adequate safety measures are not followed on site, and it leads to calamities. So hazardous materials, again, they can be classified into different types. In case of your methyl isocyanate was there, na, which caused leakage was there from the Bhopal, from that particular plant in Bhopal, and what happened was many people lost their lives. The environmental, again, they can be classified into various categories. Industrial refineries, factories are there. So again, this classification is there. Mining disasters are there. For coal, especially, the mining is done. Safety standards are not followed. Nuclear disasters are there. Of course, one is what, nuclear disaster which is done by intention. But this will speak about the non-intentional, like power plants are there, industrial use are there. Many people are agitating against the installation of power plants. Why they are agitating? Because they fear the loss of, you can say, or not exactly loss, even loss can be a possibility, but still they fear that their fertility of land and all these things, their, you can say, their daily activities, the environment and all will be impacted due to the power plants. The industrial use are there, many factories are there, many factories they just release their, you can say, their waste into a rivers and all, and the fishes and aquatic life are affected, and many fishermen and all these now they agitate. Even there is a famous case study of the, I don't know how many of you have heard about the Konkan Railway. There was the Konkan Railway, it goes from Mumbai to South India up to Kerala. And what happened now? The people of Goa, which is a very small stretch of Konkan Railway goes to it, they were not able to. It was the last stretch which was completed of this particular railway. It was a very long railway line. So the people of Goa were not able to, or not willing to actually give their land, because they were fearing that because of the building of that particular railway, their Khazan lands or fertile land will be, the fertility will be lost due to the flood. After the flood have gone above the level, above the embankment level, they would cause, again they would cause severe flash floods. So all these things can be avoided successfully. Medical use, again, these all disasters are many industries, they manufacture medicines using the nuclear power plant, nuclear power. Transportation disasters are there. Aviation accidents. Na, recently in Pakistan, one accident was there in Karachi, where all but two people lost their lives. The aircraft just, it couldn't land properly, and when it came back for landing, its engine failed. So this type of disasters are there which are not intentional. Yes.
सर आपकी आवाज फ्लैशिंग हो रही है.
मेरी आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Yes,
Okay,
sir,
fine.
it's breaking.
Just a moment. Now is it coming? I think when the video is on, now. Is it fine now?
Yes, sir.
So the aviation type of disasters are there. Highways, many accidents are there on highways, railroads. There are clashes, especially in the non-guarded. You can say non-guarded level crossings are there. The accidents are there. Many times we hear about it, and in the sea also, many disasters are there. The sea disasters are very, you can say, they cause a large, not damage to the human life, but the aquatic life is damaged because oil spills and all. It causes a great damage to the aquatic life. Structural damages are there if individual safety measures are not followed. Fires are caused, collapse of buildings are there. Many you see many buildings collapse. Of course, the buildings which are collapsing in Mumbai are mostly not because of the problem with the design. They are because of their age. They are not durable. The 100 story, more than 100 story, you can say 100 years or 70 to 80 years prior buildings are there. People are just living without actually making proper audit of that particular building. So regular audit is required for old buildings. Also, some cases are there where structural you can say inadequacies are there due to which the collapses or damages to the particular structures are there. But mostly which the buildings which are collapsing in Mumbai nowadays are due to the age related or you can say dilapidated type of structures are there. Their you can say useful life has been over and they should just be demolished and then reconstructed or either adequate safety you can say retrofitting shall be done. So we'll talk about the last type of disaster classification is anthropogenic intentional hazards. Mass shootings are there. This is followed especially this is you can say observed especially in US and all. Civil disobedience are there. Terrorism, this is the main you can say majority of the that's due to the anthropogenic intentional hazard is caused due to terrorism, weapons of mass destruction. These all hazards are there. Mass shootings are there in school shootings, workplace violence, hate crimes. These all things are there. In civil disobedience, labor rights, race rights, political rights, especially in US in the last month, you may have observed these all things, na? You may have observed after the death of that person, Mr. Floyd, na? The many riots were there. And in terrorism, of course, state-sponsored terrorism is also there. Countries for their own benefit, they sponsor terrorism. Some countries sponsor terrorism. Some you can say they just educate terrorism. Some form of terrorism is there. International non-state sponsored terror, non-state terror is also there. People voluntarily or out of their you can say out of their rage against some particular policy of any government, they also perform acts of terrorism. Domestic terrorism is there. Weapons of mass destruction, of course, explosive, chemical, biological, nuclear, radiological hazards, and weapons are created for destroying the enemy. So we will start with some deadliest disasters which are of. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
I'm audible properly. So just to give you the magnitude of how disasters are measured, these are just two slides before starting with the floods. Look, basically you have to study natural disasters and man-made disasters. So in natural disasters, the major disasters are flood, flash floods, earthquakes, tsunami, cyclone, tornadoes. These are the major, you can say, disasters which are associated with natural events. In India, we are more concerned with earthquakes, floods, cyclones, and flash floods. These four disasters we are more concerned with. With occasionally the tsunami because the tsunami has occurred only once. Only once it has been recorded in India. That is the tsunami which was there in 2004. But it had, you can say, very tremendous effect on the people. It had a very negative effect, or you can say many people lost their lives in the tsunami. 2004 tsunami, around 2.27 lakh people lost their lives, of which many people from India, Indian coast now of Chennai, especially the eastern coast. Although the western coast was not that much affected, but the eastern coast of India was severely affected. So we'll study that particular case also. So you can just see the top deadliest disasters which were recorded. The China flood, which was there in 1931, almost 40 lakh people. You can say almost half a crore people lost their lives. Of course, this list doesn't include the epidemics. The Spanish flu was there, which accounted for almost, you can say, zero point 0.5 or 5 million, or rather 50 lakh people. So it was the highest death toll which was recorded. But the China flood is there. Of course, this is the, you can say, disaster where a particular disaster can be attributed to a particular event. These disasters are reported here. But of course, the Spanish flu, which was there from 1918 to 1919, it had three waves, and many people. It was similar to our pandemic, which is currently we are facing. So almost 50 lakh people lost their lives. Then the River flood was there. Around 20 lakh people lost their lives. You can see these are very no recent disaster is there which is having that big impact, except that Haiti earthquake, which was in 2010, and the tsunami, which was there in 2004. So these are two major, you can say, events which are occurred in the last 2 decades. Apart from that, all these disasters are, you can say, old disasters, or rather, the deadliest disasters are in the, you can say, previous years. The frequency of deadliest disasters are reduced, but the frequency of occurrence of disasters are increased. Means there are more number of disasters these days, but the casualties are less in today's disaster, because previously the medical care and the disaster management, all these things were not that much developed, which they are developed today. So today the casualties are managed, only the frequency due to the climate change and the, you can say, climate change and the global warming, the frequency of disasters have increased, but the severity of disaster has gone down. You can see most of these disaster, if you see, they have occurred in the Asian subcontinent, mostly in China. Of course, in the last, you can say, 100 years also, if you see, these disasters are there mostly in the last 100 years. So this particular cyclone is there, sorry, tsunami is there, which we will discuss in detail. We will study 3 to 4 cases in detail in this particular module. One is the Mumbai floods, other is the cyclone, and then we will study one earthquake, Latur earthquake and Bhuj earthquake we will study. And fourth thing which we'll study in this particular module is the flash floods which were there in Uttarakhand. So these four things we'll study in detail, and also the current pandemic. So basically, just see, we'll start with the flash floods which were there in, or rather, huh, just see, I'll just go through the syllabus before starting. So what you have in this module: meaning and nature of natural disasters, flood, flash floods, drought, cloudburst, earthquake, landslides. Of course, Malian landslide also we are going to see how it occurred and what were the, you can say, what were the impact on human beings, because all disasters are measured based on the impact they have on human beings, right? Avalanches, volcanic eruptions, mud flow. These are not that much, you can say, relevant in Indian context, but still you should know. Volcanic eruptions, mud flow, cyclone is there, of course. Storm surge, climate change, global warming. This was there already in the first module. Sea level rise, ozone depletion. So out of these, first 5 or 6 are more important. Uh, okay, and then man-made disasters are there. On this also we will throw some. We'll start with the basics first. So disasters are ubiquitous, but most largely large scale disasters occur in cancer means this particular belt. Na? Disasters are less frequent in the in on the poles. Why? Because there is no human settlement. Where human settlement is not, disasters are measured based on the impact on human settlements. So especially in the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn region, the disasters are more severe, and the major impact is on the developing nations, because of course the developed nations also face the disaster, but like so many tsunamis are there, or so many earthquakes are there in Japan, but still the casualty figure is very less. Why it is less? Because they have adequate building codes and they have proper safety measures, safety policies, which the people adhere to, and the governments also make the people to adhere to, so that the casualties are less. Due to geography and topography, India has faced many disasters in the recent past. And if you see, especially in the coast, the disasters are more. The cyclones, droughts, of course, droughts are interior in the interior region. Cyclones are there, earthquakes. Available statistics also show that the number of disaster per year is increasing. You all have witnessed this, but also the number of people affected and killed is also rising because not of a particular disaster, because the disasters are increasing, so the number of people are also increasing. But if you see in a particular disaster, the number is slightly, the research has shown that the number of the people which get killed, or we can say which die due to disasters, is increasing for a particular disaster. But because the number is increasing, number of disasters are increasing, the fatalities are also increasing. You can see this is about the Indian context. So you can see in 1739, in the 17th century, a large scale earthquake was there which caused 3 lakh casualties. Then cyclones were there, and famine was there, which was a major, you can say, it had major impact on human beings. There was a famous, you can say, many case studies are there. But one famous case of that Champaran famine was there, which was close to Bengal. Bengal famine was very famous. The Champaran region, the people, there is one movie also, Lagan, on it, and you may have studied in your history chapters also. So the Britishers were demanding almost 2 times the taxes, but the Indian people, they fought against them on a cricket field, and because they were not in a position, the famine was so great, they were not in a position to produce anything. So how could they give anything to the rulers? So that famine was there, which caused a lot of famine. Means there is no food or water, especially food is not there. There is no cultivation, so people are not able to meet their food needs. Out of the basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter, the food needs are not met in a famine. The Maharashtra cyclone was there in the 19th century, Great Indian famine. So you can see so many people are affected. Bengal cyclone are there. You can see almost 5 lakh people were affected, or rather they died. Affected is another thing, and fatalities are different. Fatalities means they lost their lives. Latur earthquake is there, which was very prominent, because many people, because instead of so many, you can say, development and all, still people lost their lives. Orissa cyclone was there, 10,000 people lost their lives. Gujarat earthquake also, it was a major earthquake. And Kashmir earthquake, which was there, part was there in India and part was there in Pakistan. So almost a lakh people lost their lives. So natural disaster, will just study a brief profile before going to the actual Mumbai floods. So each type we'll just discuss in short. So earthquake, India is having a high risk towards earthquakes. More than 58% of India's land is under threat of moderate to severe seismic hazard. You can imagine, because there are various zones. 5 zones are there. Of course, for your design and all, you may have studied this zone for calculations of dead load and wind load. Sorry, not wind load, but for that zoning purpose, you may have seen the various zones, right? So more than 58% of India's land is under the threat of moderate to severe seismic hazard. Maharashtra previously was thought to be aloof from, or you can say it was thought to be protected from this particular earthquakes. But in the recent 20 years after the Koina Dam was built, na, the the Koina Dam was built. So what has happened? The water stored has caused tremendous pressure on the, you can say, on the land, on the geological formations there, and so certain tremors are found, or you can say certain earthquakes are found. They are not, you can say, again, earthquake, there is classification of earthquakes you may have studied in geology, tectonic and non-tectonic again. So based on this, it may be classified as a non-tectonic earthquake. So what has happened is, the severity also, or the frequency of earthquake has increased in the past 50 years. So during the last 20 years, India has experienced 10 major earthquakes that have resulted. Of course, India has now this India has experienced more. Apart from India, of course, there are earthquakes in, you can say, Nepal, which are there, and many other, you can say, in the vicinity of Indian subcontinent, earthquakes have been observed. Of the earthquake prone areas, 12% is prone to very severe earthquakes like the Himalayan belt and all. 18% is severe earthquakes, and 25% to damageable earthquakes. Biggest earthquakes occur in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the Kutch, Himalayan and Northeast. The Himalayan regions are particularly prone to earthquakes. You can just see the earthquake risk profile. Now, previously in Maharashtra, if you see, this was under this moderate damage, but it has become high damage after the construction of the Koina Dam, which is somewhere around here. So, last 50 years, the profile has changed. So you can see again this Gujarat belt and all, na, they are again in the high, somewhere here around here the Bhuj is there. They are in the high risk. Of course, the northeast is again, it is a totally hilly terrain, so it is again, so it is again a very high damage sort of zone. And again, the interiors are there, which do not have that much, you can say, complicated terrestrial features. So the risk map is, or you can say, earthquake risk is slightly reduced. Earthquake in Gujarat, some photos are there. You can see what damage it had caused. Official figures say that around 10,000 people lost their lives, but unofficially many people were not able to be traced. So floods are there. Of course, in Mumbai we are well aware of the floods, what they cause. But again, there are many other floods also which occur in different parts of our country. So around 30 million, that means 3 crore people are affected. You can imagine 3 crore people means almost 2% of our population. More than 2% of our population is affected by floods annually. Floods occur in the Indo-Gangetic Brahmaputra plains are an annual feature. Of course, floods can occur. One is due to the seasonal rain. Another reason is due to the melting of the ice. So the Ganga, generally the Himalayan ice melts in the summer, and the volume of the river is increased. And when it is accompanied by again rains, what happens is the floods occur. On an average, a few hundred lives are lost. Millions are rendered homeless, and severe hectares of crops are damaged every year. This year, Assam is particularly, an interesting fact about this year is, up to now, there is no major, you can say, hazard which has occurred. Of course, there are floods and all are there, but compared to previous years, the intensity is relatively less. Of course, this pandemic is there. The pandemic, even if you see the number of casualties, they are not that much as compared with the other disasters. And of course, the time span is also more, because the pandemic, it is measured, the death toll is measured from the last, say, 4 to 5 months, and whether in a particular case, you can say a tsunami or an earthquake, there is an immediate, you can say, casualty risk, or immediate casualties are there, and they move in thousands. So nearly 75% of the total annual rainfall occurs over a monsoon period. It is more so in Mumbai. In Mumbai, it is said that almost 75 to 80% of the rainfall is received within 10 showers. And so in a 10, in 10 shower, 10 days of a year, the rainfall is, you can say, rainfall is almost all the rainfall is met with. So 40 million of hectares, or 12% of Indian land. You will remember this figure. The earthquake prone land was how much? 58%, whereas the flood prone land is 12%. Is considered to be prone to floods. Floods are perennial phenomena in at least 5 states. These states are more the severity of floods is more. Assam, Bihar, Orissa, Uttar Pradesh, and West Bengal. On account of climate change, floods have also occurred in the recent years in areas that are normally not flood prone. Of course, many areas are occurred which people not didn't think of they will be flood, like Rajasthan, which is an arid region. There also many floods were there. I think 2 to 3 years back there was a severe flood in Rajasthan. In 2006, drought-prone parts of Rajasthan. This 2006 is also an example where the floods were there. Drought is another recurrent phenomena. It occurs in India, especially in May-June period. This results in widespread adverse impact on vulnerable people's livelihood and children's nutritional status. About 50 million people are affected annually by drought. Approximately, you can imagine 50 million it amounts to 5 crore. 5 crore people are affected annually by drought. You can imagine how severe the drought is. Of approximately 9 million hectares of rain-fed areas, about 4 million are prone. You can imagine that there is 9 million. This much area is there, which is rain-fed area means it is not irrigated. It has to depend on rain. Out of that, 40 million are prone to almost half of the land is prone to scanty or no rain, on which the agriculture depends. So you can imagine how much important the irrigation systems and all these systems are there. Although a slow onset emergency and to an extent, so it is a slow onset. Slow onset means it is not an immediate like an earthquake or a tsunami, but it is an emergency and to an extent predictable. It is also if often predictable. The Met Department predicts the emergency. Drought has caused severe suffering in the affected areas in recent years, including effects on poverty, hunger, and employment. This is especially observed in you can say in the interior parts. So many people they resort to because they do not have any livelihood, so they just move to the cities. You may have observed many people they just along with their you can say animals their goats and all they come to the cities and they just live for say 1 or 2 months in the cities till the rainfall is properly the rainfall monsoon season properly starts. You may have observed, all of you must have observed. Of course, there are some Marathi movies also on it, which are, of course, on these lines. Cyclones. About 8% of the land is vulnerable to cyclones. Of course, the coastal region. So there was a cyclone recently in the last month. Of course, previous to that month also there was a cyclone in Bengal, in Kolkata and other regions of Bengal, which was more severe than the cyclone which we observed in Maharashtra. So this is important. Cyclonic activities on the east coast are more severe than the west coast. Why? Because the Bay of Bengal is more prone to the cyclone than the Arabian Sea. This you should remember. The Indian continent is considered to be the worst cyclone affected part of the world as a result of low ocean bed topography and coastal configuration. You should remember because what is happening now, India is if you see the profile of India, it is a the coastal line is such that it is surrounded by on three sides we have water in the western, the eastern, and the southern side. The land mass is there mostly in the northern side only. We are surrounded by land mass generally in the northern side or northeastern and northwestern side. So what happens is because of this, you can just see the cyclone or even Sri Lanka. If you take the example of Sri Lanka, the sea will be affected by cyclones and all these floods. Sorry, not floods, but cyclones and other you can say tropical climatic problems. So what happens is because of the profile, because of the course, because of being directly in the ring of you can say ring of fire or being directly in the zone of fire, what happens is the severity is increased, especially in the coastal regions. So principal threat from a cyclone is in the form of gale and strong winds. So torrential rain, high tidal wave storms are there. More cyclones occur in Bay of Bengal than the Arabian Sea. You can imagine that if 4 cyclones occur in Bay of Bengal, one occurs in the Arabian Sea. You can see. I hope this figure is visible to you all. You are able to see this figure?
Yes, sir.
Fine. So you can just see very high risk damage zone for cyclones. They are in the eastern coast rather than the western coast. Of course, these all regions are there also. They are also high risk in the northern region. In the at Karnataka and all these belts are there are very less risk damage zones. Landslide is a particular case, especially where the geological formations are such that, of course, they are either in a sloping ground or hilly terrain, or the land or the you can say soil properties itself are not able to withstand the, you can say, lateral earth pressure or whatever pressures are there inside the you can say zones inside the land. So in the hilly terrain of India, including the Himalayas and northeast India, landslides occur quite frequently. So of course, the Malpa, Uttarakhand, and also in our in Maling region, which was near Pune, of severe landslide occurred, and many landslide occurs in Mumbai, in Ghatkopar, and all these areas, now where the people live in hilly areas, and during the rainy season, when the, you can say, moistness in the soil is increased, the lateral earth pressure is increased. What happens is the it gives way and the land comes down. Then avalanche is there. Of course, it is occurs in the hilly regions where ice is there. So of course, tsunami is there. You can see, although Kerala is in the western coast, but the tsunami which affected na in 2004, it hit Kerala also. Why it hit Kerala? Because the wave just came from here and they just negotiated and they struck the Kerala coast also. Of course, the tsunami was in this region, the Andaman and Nicobar, and these entire regions they are affected. So tsunami caused a tremendous damage. We'll study this 2004 case study in detail. Characteristics of natural disaster, you can see predictability, it can be high or low. Like in case of tsunami, predictability is relatively, you can say, medium type of predictability is there. It is neither high neither low, because you can predict, but sometimes predicting the if it is very close to if the earthquake occurs very close to the coast, it becomes difficult. Like in case of that 2004 tsunami, there were only 15 minutes for Indonesia and all the Thailand and all these countries to predict the tsunami. But in India, we had sufficiently 1.5 hours to predict, but we could not predict because we did not have the early warning systems for it. But if you would have known through some news agencies or through some agencies that there is a tsunami, the Indonesian countries or that belt is affected, so maybe we could have evacuated the people, but that was not the case, and many people lost their lives. Initial lethality, it may be low and high. Of course, initially it may be low, like the pandemic. Na initial lethality it was quite low. People thought that it is not that much dangerous, but now it is established that the lethality is quite high. Scope, it may be high or low. Scope for the disaster to cause damage. Onset delivery, it may be sudden or slow. Like earthquake is a sudden disaster. Famine is a slow, you can say, slow type of disaster. So last century, many ecological disasters are added. Bhopal gas tragedy and all these things are in- added. It is virtually impossible to prevent most disasters, but we cannot prevent disaster. We can we can prevent the potential of disaster. That is, we can prevent the hazards. So the greatest number of disasters occur in those countries that are already most affected by the ill and conditions. So I will just share the attendance. Yes, Chernobyl is non-intentional nuclear disaster. Yes, correct. It is a non-intentional nuclear disaster. So all of you fill the form. Of course, I have your attendance here also. I will tally with it.
Wasn't it?